Well, hello. Hello from a computer. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Inside the Writer's Zoom with Saturday Night Live, the oldest show in the world. I am a beautiful model named Aidy Bryant, and I'm here with some of my friends who write on the show Saturday Night Live, and I'm going to ask them some questions. But first, what an honor to be here. And I hope that all of you in the WGA will write me something really good to star in. Okay. I was promised something along those lines. But why don't we introduce who we're here with now? And I was thinking maybe you could say who you are and say what your job is and say how long that you've worked at the show. And I think we should start with the girl with the Diet Coke.
Oh, no. Sorry, I am sponsored by Diet Coke. It's really bad for you. I'm Anna Drezen. I'm one of the approximately 30 head writers of SNL, and it's great to be here.
And how long have you worked at the show? That's one of my questions.
Sorry, I was too busy deciding if it was okay to take a sip. I didn't hear anything you said. I've been at the show for 5 seasons, and last season was my first as head writer.
Woo!
And yeah.
They're very good.
Was it good? Did I do it?
Yeah, very good. Let's go. Kent, could you please answer my questions?
Same question?
Yep, all the same questions. Your name, your job, your how long.
My name is Kent Sublette. I'm one of the also hundreds of co-head writers at Saturday Night Live. I've been a head writer since, I think, 2017, whenever the man got elected is when it was. And then this is, I think, was my 14th season. So I've been around for a long time.
Wow. And Michael Che?
My name's Michael Che. I am a Capricorn. I think, no, actually, I'm a Taurus. And I forget my birthday sometimes. And I'm one of the, I think I'm approximately 2% of the head writers on this staff. And I've been there since, I think I started in 2013, but I think I've been head writer since 18. I'm really not sure.
Wow. Thank you. I'll look into this.
That long.
And Erik, who are you?
My name is Erik Kenward. I'm a producer and writer at the show, and I've been there since 1947.
Well, they were sawing girls in half on the show.
Oh my God. Well, get ready, you fuckers, because the questions are about to come in hot.
I'm nervous.
Okay. Now, my first question is, how does SNL's writer's room work? What's the pitch process like?
How does it work?
Yeah, is there a buzzer? Or
you want me to call on you? Because I can.
You can raise hand. There we go.
Yes, Anna?
How does it work?
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm a real Zoom head. So it's a little bit Wild West in our writer's room. There's no like official pitch process. People are free to write about whatever they are interested in that week. And most people will write with at least one other writer or cast member. And the way things work, it's usually just people sitting in an office or on a painstakingly scheduled FaceTime and batting around like, here's 11 things that I wrote down that might be funny. And through that process, like the things that you are both having fun talking about, you can then decide to write. And things will get tossed aside if they're not feeling right, or like you discover something else that's funnier that you can go ahead and write. It truly is dictated by what do the 2 or 3 people in the room think is funny, which is amazing and kind of rare. Yeah.
We do have a thing in a normal year called pitch on Mondays with the host, where writers will come into a very small room and tell them ideas, but there are 99% of them are fake ideas that they just thought of 5 minutes before they got in the room. And it's mainly just I don't know if this is the intention of pitch, but it's just sort of a time for the writers to kind of get a sense of who the host is in real life and like maybe get an idea from like a 10-minute meeting, if that makes sense.
I think also for the host to feel like there's all these people that are here to work for me and sort of to put them at ease a little bit too. But I feel like the writing process of the show is like very bottom up as opposed to like top down. Like we like a little bit try to keep track of who's writing what and what things are being written about, but really like Anna said, it's like what people find funny, and then that kind of gets sorted out later in the week, as opposed to people getting like assigned specific pieces early in the week. That doesn't really happen very much.
Yeah, sometimes a host will come in with an idea that they want to write that'll get farmed out, but generally not.
Right.
And Che, do you agree with what these colleagues have said? Just a simple yes or no?
Everything was on the money. I'm going to say yes.
Right. Good. Okay, good. Maybe let's talk about like, because I feel like this is a question that people ask a lot about, like, what does the week look like? Like, because, you know, I feel like on a typical show, it's like you go from idea to script in like potentially like 3 months, and we're doing that in this like 6-day period. So do you want to talk about like what a typical week at SNL, what the schedule looks like, and then maybe talk about what the differences were for us this year in like COVID writing world?
Well, typically Monday is pitch and writers meeting where, you know, we kind of talk about, if this is the first episode, we kind of talk about the season or, you know, whatever. And the head writers and the producers talk a little bit. And we talk to the writing staff. Then we go on the pitch. And then you kind of start to designate where you want to write, who you want to write, make your appointments with, oh, can we talk about this idea or whatever? That's typically how it goes. Tuesday, we write all night. Sometimes people sleep over. Sometimes people get their work done a little bit early where they go home. And then Wednesday, we do our table read, which starts usually early afternoon or mid-afternoon into about 8 o'clock. Then we kind of pick the show. From picking the show, Thursday, we do our rewrite table and some of our blocking. And then Friday, we do a little bit more blocking, and also we do our pre-tapes. And then we kind of get a more sense of what's in the show and what things are looking. And I think that's kind of when Lauren starts to put the board together of what sketches should go at what time based on what the rewrites feel like and what the blocking feels like. And then Saturday, it's literally run through, dress rehearsal, and air. And it's the fastest 13, 14 hours you'll ever experience in your life, I think. Does it seem like I've answered that question before?
No, I thought that was really good. That was really good. And maybe Kent or Anna or Erik, do you want to explain maybe kind of how it was different this year? And I mean, I feel like in a lot of ways it was very similar. So how did things change for us in COVID?
I think we tried to do all the same things and have those feelings of those moments. We just had to do them over Zoom or like with a few people here and a bunch of people at home. Like the host meeting was done over Zoom, usually from they would usually be in their hotel where normally they'd be in Lauren's office. And then just usually it would be the entire writing staff and cast. And then we just it's overwhelming to have so many people on Zoom doing that to a host. So we would narrow it down just a few people.
Yeah.
And then, but the rest of it sort of was the same, just like you couldn't be in the same room with each other, which, you know, for various people was okay. You know, some people found it really hard. I didn't find it fun, but I got used to it.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what about the table read? How was that I feel like normally that's such an important piece of like hearing what we've written out loud and vibe checking it or seeing where it needs punch up or what pieces are working and what aren't. And how was it for you having this whole new different kind of table read?
It's interesting because the table read is normally in our big room on 17, but we'll have like 80 people crammed in, truly butt to butt with a bunch of Emmy Award winners in a tiny room. And like, you're just exhausted from being up all night and you have adrenaline running through you and you're like waiting for your thing to go. And then for cast, they're like at the table right next to each other, like performing while sitting. And there's a lot of emotions and anxiety while hearing your thing go, if it goes well or bad, or the worst possible, like if it just kind of does okay, which is like absolutely devastating.
Most food you've ever seen in your life. The most peanut butter sandwiches.
a king's bounty of the driest. No, I don't want to. We get great crafty. Everyone who works, all work is work. But now we were doing it in 8H and we were spread all the way out, so that some of that anxiety kind of had room to. I found it a little bit more comfortable, but it was weird to be in this giant room with fewer people, and there was still laughter. Like the first table read we did of the year, we all clapped before it started, and I was like, oh my God, I haven't applauded with a group of people before, and I almost started crying. Like it was just so fun and cathartic, and like to be able to laugh in a large group again was really exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. But we were definitely like a person here, a person way over there, much less people than we are usually used to. And I found that it definitely made the laughs, just like you're more self-conscious if you're by yourself and there's no one around you and you're laughing a lot, or, you know, that can happen. So I feel like there were less, you just had to sort of trust like, okay, no one laughed at this, but I still think this is funny. I'm going to try it anyway, even though I didn't get the response that I was hoping for in that different situation.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes it was hard to, like a lot of times what's fun about read through is seeing like the performances that, you know, the choices that the cast members make. And I feel like it was harder sometimes. I feel like it was harder sometimes to get a sense of that because like everyone had these little like UN microphones that they had to like click in and, you know, speak. And it made it, you know, it just made it feel less organic sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hearing like, sorry, just like a cast member's mask rub up against the microphone and all you hear is like, like glad that we're protecting each other from the plague, but they couldn't hear my joke.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, as someone performing it to silence, it felt good.
That was another thing.
Silent room.
that was another thing too. Like with, you know, the table, typically, it's not just the writers and the cast in the room. So it's a lot of the, you know, a lot of the departments are there, hair, design, everybody's in there. So it's packed with a lot of different people that aren't comedy writers. So in a room full of comedy writers, some stuff might not work the same way for when you kind of hear actual people listening to it. And I think that energy is also helpful when it's a lot more packed, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a bad year. Well,
I will say, I feel like Lauren has always been good at like still, even if something dies at the table, if there's something that Lauren likes about it and sees in it, he will say like, well, we're going to try that anyway. So I think that was definitely a good thing to have.
Yeah, we always pick like 3 or 4 extra sketches. So we have some wiggle room to take chances like that, which is great. You never know what will end up being the true banger of the show. Like things will move, something that was like, we'll see, that was like way late in the show can move up and open out of monologue. Just it depends on what the audience responds to and what is funny when it's up on its feet.
And
right, or like something that's like visual. Like I remember a couple years ago, was that was it Farewell Mr. Bunting or whatever, which was like a sketch that was a very visual gag. And at the table, it seemed very quiet, but we kind of all saw like, oh man, if we produce this right, it'll look very funny. It was probably the loudest laugh I think I heard since I've been at the show when that turn came. But it's stuff like that where sometimes it might not play to big laughs in the room, but we could see, oh, this could really work if we produce well.
And how much are you checking in during a week or on a writing night as far as making sure of like, okay, the monologue is covered, the cold open is covered, like, you know, these types of like topical pieces. How does that kind of get figured out?
I mean, I think that's Kenward could best answer that one, I believe.
I mean, we check in every few hours and try to make sure that like those things are being written, or like, you know, we'll have a conversation early in the week about whether anyone has an idea for a monologue or whether someone wants to sit down and take a crack at doing a monologue. The cold open we usually don't do until later in the week. And that's kind of been the case for at least the last 5 or 6 years. Like when I started at the show, a lot of times we would read cold opens on Wednesday and we would do that, they would hold up through the week. But now I feel like, the news cycle has gotten so, has sped up so much that I feel like something we read on Wednesday might not feel, very of the moment by Saturday. So I think those increasingly get written later in the week. And then, sometimes there will be weeks, obviously, where there's a news story that really needs to be covered or something about the host really needs to be dealt with. And I feel like, then we will have conversations about, who's going to do that or whether someone has an idea about that.
That's true for update too. There's a lot of like as far as the topicality of it, where there would be stuff that we would kind of write throughout the week that would hold as top stories, but now we kind of save top stories for Friday because we know that by Saturday it's going to be old news, something from Monday or Tuesday. And for features as well, sometimes we leave a space for a feature on Wednesday just in case something topical comes up Friday night, and then that'd be a great feature for somebody that in the cast that could do it.
Well, Che, this is interesting because you're actually answering sort of one of my next questions on the list. So I'd like to go a little deeper. Yes, I was sort of wondering, what is the process of writing Weekend Update and how involved are you? And in what ways does it come together? And who gets to say the jokes about the week and who gets to do the characters at the desk? And go ahead and answer that.
Well, this typically, we kind of check in every day with update. We'll kind of go in the office and kick ideas and just talk about, stories for the week. We have 4 update writers, Josh, Pete, Mark, and Megan, who, contribute. So they're writing jokes all week, kind of when me and Colin are focused on sketches, sort of. And, by by Thursday night, Friday, once the show is sort of in shape, that's when we start to take the jokes that were written during the week and figure out kind of what we want to do, what we think will be the top stories or what feels like, rich ideas that we may have even that might be good for second act. But by Friday, we really sit down and get together and start picking jokes and start rewriting jokes. Me and Colin's formula or system is a little bit different because Colin tends to work much later through the night because a lot of times he's working on cold open, so his time is a lot different than mine. But that we usually do it about Friday night, and we always have features at the table. And if there's 2 or 3 that we like, sometimes we'll go with those. But again, sometimes we like to only pick about 2 and then have some possibilities depending on what the end of the week is so that it feels like we wrote the show on Saturday. It feels fresh.
Ooh, now that's what you call answering a question. Am I right, chat? Well, I'm getting some feedback and I'm seeing great moderating Aidy coming through. Wow. Seems to me like the WGA should get on the keyboards for me and help me. Oh God, I'm out here dying. All right, what's next on my paper?
You're killing it, Aidy. You kidding me?
Doing great.
I feel sick at my stomach doing this. Here we go. Okay, how was it doing 6 shows in a row? And if you want, you could all answer in unison with one word.
3, 2, 1. Bad.
Ooh, terrible.
It was bad.
Never again.
Rewarding.
Okay, we knew it was bad and rewarding. Good. Okay, I won't make you dwell on that because I feel like it's like too traumatic, maybe.
Yeah, something happened to my brain that week where it no longer makes memories. And I think there are certain like psychological things you can go through that are as traumatic as like a physical blow. And I learned that.
For content, we typically do 3, at most 4 in a row. So 6 in a row is like insane. So that's why we're saying
it's bad. 6 in a row is bad.
Yeah. This might be me like distinguishing between 2 types of like shit sandwiches, but I feel like we did 6 in a row at the beginning of the season, and then we did 5 in a row later in the season. And I feel like the 5 in a row later in the season was even worse for me.
Yes.
I feel like the 6 in a row at the beginning, at least, like there was this sort of ambient adrenaline from the election happening, and that like, we were trying to do the show for the first time under these circumstances. But then the 5 in the middle of the season, after the election was done, that was tough. That was
tough.
Ooh, that was tough. Well, speaking of tough, I've got another question for you coming your way. And the question is natural, and it's coming from my mouth, which is, which sketch was a tough one to crack, and how did you work through it?
God, I feel like they're all hard. Like it's something like sketches are so short and simple, but you like have to be funny right away, but also clear. And like it has to make sense on the paper enough that it will get picked, but then work on its feet. Truly, every time I start, sometimes they're natural, but like every time I start writing a sketch, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, it's like, I feel like it almost never gets easier. I don't know if I'm revealing myself to be not good in a way that other people will not agree with, but
Yeah,
just every time
they're all impossible. It's just an impossible thing to do. All writing is impossible, I think. And my instinct is if it's hard to crack, then like forget it. I'll just.
Yeah, it is like if you're not laughing while writing something, that I have to remind myself that like if I'm in a 3-hour argument about semantics with my writing partner about like, should it be the word that or this, like, and neither of us are laughing, probably it's not going to work. Which I hate to realize at that point because I've already invested time. But like when we are crying, laughing, and like breaking blood vessels under our eyes, it's like, oh yeah, that's the sketch you write, you know? They're not all like that. And like with a live show that's weekly, you kind of have to, sometimes you're just making content and you gotta push it out. Yeah, the monologues are always tricky because it's like, it's a little bit like writing a celebrity memoir that's also stand-up. And like, you don't want to hurt their feelings, but you don't want it to not reference anything about them. And every host is different. Like some are extremely nervous and some are like very excited to finally try this. And most of them, it's some kind of dream that they've had, or at least they understand that it's a big thing to do. So it's an extremely nervous person who's also very important is like it's hard to write for that person.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I was just saying, I ran out of words.
Bringing up monologues, those are, I think, are some of the hardest things to crack. Like those create the most challenges during the week because hosts will say like, oh, I don't care, I'll do anything. And then you're like, well, that doesn't help me. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard when they're like very flexible early in the week and then it becomes clear that they, somewhere around like Thursday or Friday afternoon, they start realizing, oh my God, this is the show that I'm left with. And this is going on television, legally speaking, no matter what. And they sometimes will backpedal on what they thought they were comfortable with. Not that they were like overblowing it, but it just something about the Saturday coming closer changes their math. So there's a lot of rewriting that happens, especially I think in COVID, it was harder because people were cooped up all year and not working. And so you had the combination of like, they had a lot of yayas to get out. Like they haven't been playing pretend on sets and stuff, like, or touring or whatever. And also they're not promoting anything. So like the trade-off for them being there is not as evident. So it was sometimes harder to get people feeling comfortable and happy.
And speaking of harder, how was it harder making the show in the pandemic? Challenges, silver linings, or surprises that came your way? Can you tell I'm reading?
God.
I think the biggest challenge I thought was not being around everybody constantly, because there's a lot of ideas, like a lot of our favorite ideas or sketches come from, I was just sitting in somebody's office and we were messing around for about an hour, and then somebody did something funny and then it turned into something. Like those kind of moments you don't really get as much. It's a lot of, oh, I got this idea about this, and then you talk to somebody on Zoom about it, or you call somebody about it. But those kind of organic, weird combinations just in the room and somebody doing something silly, I felt like I missed a lot of that. And I think also for newer cast and newer writers, it was probably harder because they never really got a sense of that kind of camaraderie and how silly everything is and where these ideas come from. So that you miss, you know. But other than that, I think as the season got along, we started to kind of find our comfort zone, and kind of everything that felt weird to start felt a little bit more normal. And you know, now try taking your mask off there, you know, this is like a weird kind of feeling. So seeing people with their mask off, but so I think it started to get a little bit more normal, but those kind of spontaneous moments of just being in the writer's room, I think was the biggest hurdle for me personally.
Yeah, it like the in-person camaraderie is kind of the cushion that helps you withstand a lot of the blows of like, it's just like it's like Aidy was talking about before, it's 3 months of production crammed into 1 week, and like all of the ups and downs that come with that are also condensed, and that's a lot to go through. So like being able to sit in an office with people and just talk is not having that was really difficult. It was a lot easier to kind of spin out in your own house, like, do I suck? And there was no one around to be like, no, you're the best. But yeah.
I know. I feel like it's normal to cry at SNL, like going through a normal week, and then like going through it alone in pandemic where you're like scared of a disease. It was like, you got to cry.
In the first couple of weeks, you know, some of us went to the office, some people didn't, but like coming home in a cab and you're like, is this okay? I mean, very thankful to have jobs, but like, is this okay? What's going to happen? You know, it was, we got used to it, but the first few weeks were like a little scary.
Yeah, just felt like doing the show on Mars or something.
Yeah. And it is very crazy that like at the beginning of our season, we were feeling like so freaked, and by the end of the season, like almost everyone was vaccinated. Like it's such an insane turn. But that's not for me to comment. In fact, it's for me to question.
You know that.
I don't know. I've never seen the show, but I've heard it's quite nice. Let's see. Now, okay, this is kind of a fun one. What was your first professional writing gig, and how did you get your start?
Kent,
Kent? We start with Kent.
I mean, I was a performer at the Groundlings, and then I think SNL was basically my first professional writing job after that. So I guess that counts, kind of.
That counts.
I wasn't paid anything.
Yes, that counts. Erik?
My first professional writing job was for a toy company called Rumpus, and I wrote cartoons for their toys, which were on the internet. But at the time, the like streaming capacity was so low that like 15 people in Manhattan could watch these cartoons maybe. And it's like a job, they paid me money. And then after that, I started working at SNL.
Well, what would you be writing? Like, what kind of cartoons were
they? Had different kinds of,
like
toys. Like they had these toys called like space pups that were like dogs that were astronauts.
Of course.
And I wrote, cartoons about these dogs being astronauts. They had these little things called Eggles, which were kind of like Smurfs. And I wrote cartoons about those things.
I'm just saying I would play any one of these in a feature film.
I mean, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was fantastic.
Eggles project.
Okay, Anna, what was your first?
I definitely came of age in the era where you would be paid $25 to write a 500-word article about the time your ovaries fell out at But I think my first real writing gig was for Reductress, which is a website. It's like a satire site.
Yes, we love it.
Reductress, Google it. You'll find plenty. But yeah, and then SNL was my first TV gig though, which I think is pretty common. At some point, Kenward, last year, you referred to SNL as a teaching hospital, which I think is like extremely accurate. You've got all these brand new people who have good instincts and have learned something, but it's like, wow, we're doing live television with true newcomers.
Sometimes they're like 14 years old too.
Maybe, I don't know how to be a cast member at SNL, a skill you have to have is like being able to field nervous energy from the 11-year-olds who are hired, which I count myself, absolutely. When I was hired, I didn't know we were allowed to talk to cast. I thought we had to like get special permission from the talent department to talk to them. Not chill.
Well, Che, where did you get your start?
I think this was honestly my first like writing job, and probably the first job I've ever paid taxes on purpose that I've ever, like literally. I came from stand-up, so you really kind of just make cash the whole time. But yeah, this is definitely my first like writing job.
Wow. And look at you now, doing a WGA panel on Zoom from your home. Must be nice.
Yeah, my mother would be so confused if she could see me now.
Oh my God. Well, guess what? The questions aren't done. I've got a couple more. I'm kind of getting sexy as I'm doing it, I'm realizing. So hey, if you're at home, please stop jacking it to me on the WGA panel. For real.
And the way you can show that you're jacking it is by raising your hand. Say, I'm using this on myself.
No, but for real, this is a professional thing, and that's why I have to ask a classic question, which is, of course, and I was seeing this fly through in the chat. So chat, wake up, because you might want to know the answer to this one. What do you look for when you're hiring writers? Because I know that you guys look at the packets and you interview the people, right? What do you look for in these samples, and what do you look for in a meeting when you're hiring for Saturday Night Live? Let's go.
I mean, beyond someone that you just think is funny, you think their material is funny, I always look for someone that I feel like has a voice that even though it's a short meeting or just a stack of papers, you're like, oh, this is this person's point of view. That's what I'm always looking for. If it's sort of all written to be things like we already do on the show, and it's what's challenging, because you want to write like, well, here's some useful stuff, but if it all feels like, well, here's a sketch that's kind of like this other sketch, and here's a sketch that's kind of covering this area, but I don't have a sense of what your point of view is on things, then I'm not as interested maybe as I would like to be.
I feel like I like, it sounds corny, I guess, but like to be surprised. Like if someone writes something that really makes me laugh and I can't figure out how they had that idea, that's fantastic. That's like the best thing for me. Like if I can't do the math retroactively as to how they got into that idea, that's great for me.
Yeah. I always try to kind of look for like, because a lot of times packets, or they'll write what they think we do. And I always try to look for the person that's writing what they think is funny, so like sometimes they'll literally just write something that they think is like what would be on the show already, which is, we already have that. So I'm always looking for like people who's willing to write something that truly they think is funny and willing to take kind of risk on their tastes. And then I think those are the people that tend to do what Erik said, which is also something that I'm looking forward to. There's something like, where did that come from? Where did you even think of that? That's where it really feels fun.
Yeah, there's been so many sketches that have been written at this point in human history, and like it's so exciting when something feels completely new.
Right.
Yeah.
And also like it's clear that they're familiar with what we do on the show, but it's different enough. It's not so loyal that it is something we already have, or not innovating, but it is like it's clear, like when people write packets with cast members from like 100 years ago, just, you want to feel like they are aware of what the show is right now.
Yeah.
Now, riddle me this, Penny.
Oh God.
Can you think of a favorite sketch that maybe, and I'm going to say that you wrote on from this past season, something you were particularly proud of or that you thought you liked?
Oh God.
Don't be bashful. I'm asking you to stand up and be proud.
Oof.
If you take too long, I'll make you give your favorite sketch that I performed in. So you better start thinking.
I'll start with one of those that you performed in because I did write it, and that was the wine sign sketch that you did.
Yes, that you did.
That I wrote, that you did, and Anna wrote as well.
Mm-hmm.
Little.
Just because like so many sketches that I think I wrote over the last year were sort of like filtered through the anxiety of COVID. And that was just sort of an old observation that I had of like, these wine signs are like, don't whine or you won't get mommy's wine or whatever, those dumb signs that they sell. And you were just so funny in it. And it was sort of like had a hint of COVID stuff in it, but like there was usually every sketch starts with like, okay, we're all here together, but we've been vaccinated and we're in a pod. And also, you have to like explain how a sketch can happen. And it's like, that one was just a party and like, we kind of didn't deal with that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. I think maybe I think that when Chappelle hosted, we did this Uncle Ben sketch. I was like, it was fun only because it was kind of a sketch. It started with him on home base introducing the premise and going straight into Uncle Ben being fired for. So I think that was probably the most fun because it was working directly with Dave, who's somebody that I watched do sketch for years that I loved, and so I think that was probably the most fun one.
Mm-hmm.
Bowen Yang and I wrote the iceberg update,
Yes,
which was very fun. Very weird that it worked for anyone that wasn't me and Bowen, but always fun to be proven wrong. But it's hard. It's a hard question because I feel like this is my first year as head writer, and like the further up, when you're more managing people, you write a little bit less, and it's hard to feel like, oh, I didn't write as many little pearls as I usually do. It's hard to be like, oh, that note that I gave that new writer that really helped them figure out how to write the thing they were passionate about, and then I suggested cutting off the top 30 seconds and then stating the game more clearly. That's what I'm proud of. It's like hard to post a link to that to your agent so they can send it to people. But yeah. What about you, Aidy? You had some bangers.
honestly, I gotta tell you, I don't remember. It's all gone. The second it ends, he gone, unfortunately. And probably Wine Signs was a true fave. I did love that one. But again, I'm brain dead.
That's like the hardest part about like when you ask that question too, because you're just like, what was this year again? Who hosted? When did it start? Like I have zero recollection.
Genuinely, I can't, like, I don't remember who the hosts were. I don't remember anything. And I think that's sad. Well, we have a few minutes left before we're going to get into that Q&A. So if you got questions, go ahead and type them into the computer and they may be asked from my mouth. But before this, I do want to ask, do you guys have any piece of advice that you've learned about running a writer's room or trying to encourage good pieces out of people or anything in that area? Is there a piece of advice that you would either give to young writers or people who are running a room on how to get the best out or to foster creativity? That's one that I'm kind of improving onto the question.
Yeah, it's hard. Like you can't just squeeze someone and say funnier, faster now, producible, our show. Yeah, I think like staggering out bathroom breaks somehow is the most important thing you can do as a showrunner. Like, is everybody hungry and has to pee? Great. Like, take care of that and then see what they pitch.
Yes.
Yeah, I think like being clear with what you need, and like if you're something I've noticed, like a thing that I try not to do is give writers too narrow of a target to hit. Like if you're coming in from a pre-meeting where it's like, okay, so it can't be this, but it can't be that, but it has to be this. Also, it has to include that. And then every pitch that comes in, it's like, no, because of this thing from the meeting you weren't in. No, because that, well, it doesn't really work. I don't know. Like if you're like a goalie for pitches, like people, it's not going to inspire people to pitch more. Like the main thing, whether it's with writers or other departments, like people have to feel like they are good at what they do and that you're inviting them to collaborate in the way that feels good for them. It can't be like, do this shit that I hate. Like, it's like, what's funny? We're connecting. We're all laughing together. Yeah, again, like if the room isn't laughing, you're probably not writing comedy. Like if everyone's mad at each other, maybe take a break.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. I think knowing what you want before you go in, kind of know what you're looking for, and also making sure that everybody kind of feels free to be able to say whatever. Because usually the thing that you say the fastest and the most flippant is sometimes the funniest. You're like, where the hell did that even come from? But it's so funny. And also those ideas could also spur ideas that from, you know, somebody can get an idea from that to something else. We don't know what it could lead to. So making sure that there's ideas just coming out constantly, and everyone feels like they can say what they want, because, you know, sometimes you're in a room where everyone's just kind of frozen still because they don't want to say the wrong thing. But knowing what you want to be able to feel that and keep that energy going is probably the trickiest balance, but the most necessary.
Yeah, I think you have to like trust that you can let everybody say whatever, because SNL is one of those rare shows where like the writer of the piece is sort of in charge of it to the end. You'll get notes from Lauren and we'll say like, Lauren really doesn't want this part of the sketch where he does this. But if the writer says like, well, this is what I want it to be, then that's what it's going to be. And then they'll either reap the reward or, you know, it won't work out.
Yeah.
But I think we do have a atmosphere right now where like everybody feels like they can say whatever, and then that writer who's in charge of your piece will be like, okay, I heard these 20 ideas, this is the one that speaks to me the most, I'm going to take this.
Yeah,
I love this. Well, guess what? I have the Q&A open. I've learned how to do that. And I'm going to read some of the questions from there a little early, because why the hell not? And I'm done with the questions that I was provided. So we're going to open it up. There's one question here that is, what is the optimal sketch length? And this is, I'm going to expand on this question a little bit, because I do think there's sometimes like these little barriers of entry that you just don't even know. Like, to you, what's a good page length for a sketch? And typically how long is a sketch on the show? Like a little bit. And if they're writing, what should they be shooting for like a packet?
I feel like lengthwise, time-wise, I feel like the sweet spot for like an average sketch is between like 4 and 5 minutes, like right in there. We use this weird format at the show, which is not really like traditional sketch template. And we do about 10 pages. But I feel like if people are writing in script format, sometimes that ends up being more like 7 or 8 pages. Mm-hmm. And that's for like a normal sketch. For like a commercial parody or something, you want that to be like about 1.5 minutes or like 4 or 5 pages. And obviously there are things sometimes that go longer than that. Like we do a lot of game show sketches on the show. And because you have to like set up the gameplay and something like that, and you have to do all that kind of like laying of pipe, sometimes those are like more like 6 minutes or a little bit longer. But I feel like a normal old sketch, like 4.5 minutes, shorter the better, but like 4.5 minutes is pretty good.
Yeah, whatever format you're using will really affect page length. But you can read it out loud and kind of game it out. Yeah, like 4 minutes feels right. And basically you want to introduce the idea, hit it like 5 or 6 times, and then have some kind of funny button at the end. So if you're focusing on that more than like time or page length, that might be helpful.
Right.
Spinning newspaper is always great to end it on. Just
Cut to full frame newspaper. Man dies in explosion. Yeah, you can have the building explode.
Building good lines.
Now someone is asking, be honest, is it worth submitting if you don't have a connection to like a UCB or you're not a rising star in stand-up? Would you still consider their packet in the pile?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's the thing with our show is like, if people are laughing, that's all we need. Like, and funny is funny. There kind of is no pedigree with that. I think like vouching for someone being funny is where you get into the like, of course it's helpful to have some kind of connection, but just like giving yourself time to draft it and feeling sure that it works and like is airtight and you're having other friends reading it, like a good packet will find its way home. We do get a lot of them, so it's tricky, but
we've hired people from all different, backgrounds, like comedically.
It's really true. And this is interesting because even this question sort of has to do with that, which is how many writers have some sort of background in improv or stand-up? Would you say that improv training or stand-up helps in the writer's room?
I feel like most people have some kind of improv, sketch, or stand-up background.
Right.
Sort of 50-50, and then there's people who have done both. Yeah, I would say like most people you'll have people who are like, oh, they also did theater, or like Celeste Yim is a playwright, but then also did Second City Toronto, and like other people went to school for acting, but like most people at some point have some kind of comedy landing place before coming SNL.
I think it helps you relate to the cast because the cast and the writers are so intermixed. So maybe if you have a little performing, you don't have to, but if you have a little performing background, I think that maybe helps with that.
Super valuable.
And the thing that helped me, because I came from stand-up and I didn't do sketch, but I never wrote sketch. So what was really helpful for me as a stand-up around sketch writers was, even if you have like an idea that could be salvageable, like there's always people there, senior writers there that could say, oh, okay, we can figure out how to make this work. So you may have something that might be a move that somebody with a little bit more experience have to show us a pretty good machine, and we know how to make this fit our system and how to kind of make it work, or at least we can try it. So a lot of times you get a lot of help, which helps you develop as a writer as well.
Sort of a lot of questions about digital shorts or videotape. How do we decide whether a piece is going to be taped versus live? Those kinds of things. What do you think?
Usually Joe says, I think we could tape it. And then
I mean, a lot of times people write things intentionally to be shorts. They'll write something on Wednesday with the idea that it could only be produced as a piece of tape. It'll either be a music video or a commercial parody or a parody of a movie trailer or something that like exists in that format. Sometimes there are times when the show is being picked, when Lauren's picking the show on Wednesday night, that he will say about something that was written to be live, like maybe we should try to shoot that, because maybe it's like reliant on like a smaller performance that might be harder to land in a live setting that might be translate better onto film. So sometimes that does happen, but I feel like usually, 85% of the time, it's people writing things that they intend to be shorts or intend to be on film.
And the real estate for what we could do film and what we can do live is different. So we'll typically do 2 to 3 maybe pieces of tape, which helps makes acts, but most of the stuff we try to write for live.
I guess I'm kind of learning something too. What about, there's a couple questions about like if the host brings their own writers, or do the hosts get a say in what sketches go on, or do they ever write? How would you answer any of those?
It depends on the host. A lot of the time, if it's somebody from a comedy background or stand-up or somebody who has their own show like Issa Rae, people will come in and write, or they'll bring writers sometimes. Sometimes they'll come in with like nuggets of ideas, but a lot of the time they're pretty open. They will weigh in the meeting on if something is like a no-go, or if they're a little bit unsure about something, or they'll be like, oh, I really like that one. And yeah, it totally depends on the person, but usually there's some degree of input, and especially between dress and air, they'll talk to Lindsay Shookus, who's our head of talent, about like, these were my top 3 that I'd love to get into the show, if possible. And we definitely take that on board.
And they're in those meetings where we pick the show. I mean, they do have a fair amount of say, you know, like, I mean, a host can kind of, you know, they don't pick the entire show, but like they can definitely, you know, get a sketch in or get it taken out, you know.
There's a couple questions about, do the cast write, or who in the cast are writers, or how does like a writer decide to work with a cast member? Answers?
Well, I think everybody on the cast definitely writes for themselves in some capacity, or even if it's with another writer. And also, I think that's what, you know, we were speaking to earlier about being in the room. Sometimes you never know what just being in the room with somebody will spawn, and you'll find some sort of chemistry with somebody the more time you spend with them. So I think like a lot of the writers have found a certain chemistry with certain cast members where they may write a lot together, but I don't think no one's off limits as opposed to, oh, this person writes with this cast member, so we kind of stay away from anything. We kind of write with everybody, and you keep who can execute the idea the best in mind, I feel, right?
Yeah, it just depends on like time, because we're limited,
Right.
but who has the bandwidth for that. But yeah, I mean, like, the chemistry will find itself. What am I talking about? You guys are the first people I've talked all day. Is that clear?
You're
The
right.
chemistry
It will find itself.
I'm in LA. Is that clear? I've been in LA for 2 weeks, and that just came out.
Changing.
I really am.
It will find itself. That's beautiful.
I go to church a couple times a week now.
Somebody's gonna get that tattooed with little prayer hands under.
Please don't.
Oh, now, wow. Uh-oh. Every time there's a small lull, the panic that goes through my spine is devastating. All right, here's the one, and I've seen this a few different times. People are asking, like, when you feel burnt out, or you're sick of comedy, or you're sick of writing, like, how do you keep going? Or is there a brainstorming trick that you have to get yourself another idea? Where do you go to when you feel like your well is empty?
Well, there's nothing like noon on Wednesday when you absolutely have to turn something in to get you there. Even if like you go through hell for 36 hours, and it doesn't always work out, but like having that definitive, for me, time that I have to turn something in, that's, you know, that panic helps me.
When it's being forced by my job, it's really inspiring. Yeah, I think like I need to kind of go through processes of like being dramatic and laying on the floor. And it's good to have friends that you can sort of do that in front of, and then you feel that, and then you can get back up. But also like baths are helpful. I started taking baths every Wednesday. I would start my day with a bath, sort of like a dramatic widower, or a widow, I guess. I'm a girl, but widower is a state of mind. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard. You got to get away from it. Go drink some water. That's always important.
Also, as a writer, like, just don't be afraid for something to not be great. You know, you kind of got to just write through it, and you really don't know what's going to be funny. Sometimes you'll write something that you think is complete. I usually will text Kenward like, hey, I got 2 pieces of straight dog shit. And he's like, yeah, just bring it in. You know, you just keep writing through it because you don't know what's going to connect. You don't know what's actually funny. Most of the time you're staring at it too long where you've completely lost the comedy context of it. So a lot of times just writing and just turning it in is really helpful and kind of all you need, because at some point you're going to get through the funk, or sometimes you'll stumble upon something that actually works. So just writing, just having a discipline of not everything's going to be perfect. Just do it.
Just do it. That's a quote from Michael Che.
That's right. Trademark, just do it. I'm going to make t-shirts.
Well, the bad news is we only have a few minutes left. And so this will be my final question. Many are saying that this will be the final question. Well, and I think I'm torn between a round of compliments from me or, no, I think let's do this instead. How about a piece of advice that you wish you could have given your younger self when you were starting out in the writing comedy? So you can actually go back and talk to yourself in Scrooge style and give yourself a little piece of comedy advice. What would it be?
Oof.
Well, this is devastating for me as a moderator. As you can imagine, it's a tough energy to end on, guys.
That's a tough one because it implies that we know what we're doing now. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, I don't know that I've cracked that code yet, but I think the most would be the one thing I would tell myself is to, I mean, as fucking cliche as it is, but like just keep performing or just keep working, because you don't know where it's going to take you, and you're not going to get any better waiting or being afraid. And you know, a lot of times like young performers or people who want to perform will be like, well, I don't have jokes yet, but you know, I want to try it, but I'm waiting until, and you're like, there's nothing to wait for. You have to just keep going, and you have to keep trying. And that's you are what you're waiting for. So you have to just keep doing it. And I think that I would have started sooner, maybe, if I knew that.
That's nice advice. Come on. Uh-oh, who's next?
I didn't speak at first because I didn't want to do the thing where you start talking on a Zoom at the same time as someone, but it's like, just believe in your, oh, sorry, you go. Your voice is beautiful. No, you go. Yeah, I think just like Shay was saying before, just writing it, just getting it out. Like it'll always be perfect in your head, but that way it never exists, which is no one will pay you for a script that you didn't write. That's perfect. Yeah, I think, wow, it's gone. Is it gone? It's gone from my brain. Like I said, my brain, I've got CTE from 6 shows.
You know, I feel like I would tell myself to use less words. I feel like I wrote too many words. And I think that sometimes you can use one word when 5 words will do, and it's funnier.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be the word dumper. It'll get a
Dumper,
laugh.
the word dumper helps comedy.
Land on dumper, you might be all right.
And
yeah,
don't be afraid of Dookie.
Dumper Dookie? Anyone?
Ken, any words for the children?
I would say surround yourself by, as much as you can by funny people, because we're very lucky to be around a lot of funny people, and seeing them work day after day, week after week, just makes you better. I found that in my youth, I would admire something so much that I would say well, I have to write something as good as that, or there's no point in doing it at all, which is not the case. And the thing that you think is bad might end up, whatever, working out. Those are 2 thoughts that maybe don't go together, but I tried. Sorry, Aidy.
No, I think this was really good. And I'm definitely seeing the chat pop off with the thank yous and the good jobs and the this is treat and we love. And so, many are saying my job has been done and you guys made it really fun. So this is, of course, another Writers Guild panel that you have watched. And we love you and we thank you and we respect you. And we've got Anna Drezen, Kent Sublette, Erik, Kenward, Michael Che. Goodbye.
Thanks, everybody.
Guys.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Bye.